Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be continuing the Dominion box set by painting the MurkNob with the knob, or the war banner. I don't know, I didn't read it. Assembly is very straightforward and simple, but due to the easy build kind of design of this, attaching to the base, we're going to have to attach the base to it. And then we're going to, assembly is simple, and then once it is completely assembled we will prime it with Bright Touch Gray Car Primer. And then with Liquitex modeling putty, once it's completely done, we're then just going to apply a light layer of it onto the base. We don't want to touch the model at all, really. We just want the surrounding area and create little waves. We're going to try to make it a mud base to continue the theme that we've been doing with the goblins, or hobgoblin. I am bringing my A game to this project. I felt like I've been putting out subpar models and videos lately, so with Elysian Green, Anthonian Camo Shade, Strachan Green, Nurgling Green, Koala Green Shade, and Agrax Earth Shade, we're going to do the skin. Now, one thing I will note is that when I chose the colors, the green paints, not the shades, is that the Elysian Green is a yellowish green, but Strachan and Nurgling are kind of a bluish green, off green, bluish olivish, which don't match with Elysian Green. And I found out that I actually bought the Auric Green color later, so oops. So I start off with Elysian Green all over. I then take Lamian Medium, and spoilers, I use Lamian Medium on every single wash and shade except for once. Lamian Medium for some reason really makes the paints and shades and contrast paints and all that stuff come out smoother and flow better. Out of the pot has some issues. And so I apply this to the Anthonian Camo Shade all over the green to add some depth and shadow everywhere. And then once that's done, I go back with the Elysian Green, slightly watered down, and I basically cover 90 to 95% of the model with this, keeping in all the shadows and depth created by the watered down Anthonian Camo Shade, watered down with Lamian Medium. And now with watered down Strachan Green, we're going to paint 85 to 90% of the model, and we're going to pick out the raised areas, the highlights, edges, stuff like that. Now, one thing to note, when it comes to the feet are going to be darker than the head and arms, so Strachan Green, like the feet, this is the last time they're going to be painted with green. We're going to be moving on when we go to the rest of the parts of the body with Nurgling Green and stuff. The feet are not going to be painted anymore, so they stay darker. I then take the Nurgling Green and I apply it to 70 to 80% of the head and arms. The most pronounced, the edges, raised areas, and open flat parts, the most raised areas will receive this. However, I noticed it is too bright in contrast to everything else, so it actually ruins the model, too highlighted. So I don't show me doing this, but then I go back and I mix Nurgling Green one-to-one with Strachan Green, and then I reapply it all over the face and the arms. And then you'll see me painting the arms with this new color, so it's not too extreme. Then I take the pure Nurgling Green and apply it to his nose, his center of his forehead, and so I just add a point of focus. And then I go back with Koala Green Shade, which isn't green, it's blue for some reason, and then I apply it to his bottom lip, because for some reason their lip is blue. And now with Screaming Skull and Wild Rider Red, we're going to do his eyes. His right eye is crushed and is like a dead eye, and his left eye will be red. So with Screaming Skull, we're going to take a very thin brush and we're going to just load up the tip If it's too much, have it press against a paper towel to have the excess drain off, and we're just going to do tap, 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 tap onto his eye. Now it's spread out a bit, but I don't know, I figured like a crushed or ruined eye would be like flattened. And then with Wild Rider Red, we do the same thing with his other eye, but we just do little tap, 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 taps to get it right. We're not brushing, we are just tapping. Think of it like a woodpecker against a tree. That's all we're doing. And I know I didn't mention it, but like his scar has Agrax Earthshade into the his scar across his dead eye. Just a thin layer. Continuing on my A game with Mournfang Brown, Thondia Brown, Eshin Gray, Agrax Earthshade, and Lamian Medium. Pretty much I'm going to be using Lamian Medium with every single shade. We're going to paint his clothes, leather coat, whatever. We're going to start off with Mournfang Brown on every other patch of brown leather. And then with Thondia Brown, we're going to paint all the other pieces of leather. And then with Eshin Gray, we're going to paint, I don't know what these are, but these are the things holding the pieces of leather together. And then with 2 parts Agrax to 1 part Lamian, we now apply this color onto all the leather. The Lamian Medium helps it flow better, and this is just going to be lightly dust and add a little bit of shade into the recesses and into the patches. Now, what's going to happen from here on out is after it receives the wash, we're going to apply the appropriate Mournfang Brown and Thondia Brown onto the highlights. We're going to start off with 90 to 95% of the model, the edges, the open flat planes, and you will see parts where the wash flows into and the raised areas from that. We will paint that as well. You'll notice it if you're actually doing it. And then once that's done, we will apply the wash again, and basically this is a back and forth of highlighting less and less and less, applying the wash again and again. However, this creates a very smooth transition, so the shadows and highlights are very subtle, but they're there and noticeable. It's not harsh transitions. And so maybe this is a little bit of a redundant way of doing it, but it's very smooth coating this way, mostly because the Lamian Medium and the transitions are very smooth. In this process, I basically put the wash 3 times and highlighted 3 times, highlighting less and less and less, focusing on the edges and the open flat planes, and the highlights become less and less so that the highlights become more apparent and the transition becomes more apparent. I then take Eshin Gray and re-highlight all the, I don't know what they are, the things that attach the pieces of leather together. But that doesn't cut it. So I take Dawnstone and I just apply it to the upper half, the upper top of each of these, I don't know what they are, lines. Yeah, so that it sticks out. And now with Administratum Gray and Rackhart's Flesh, we're going to paint the staff and the wood handle on his weapon. We're start off with Administrative Gray, and then we're going to take Rackhart's Flesh and we're going to paint straight lines along the handle and the staff. Now the thing is though, the staff has these lines, it's pretty obvious, and so it's easy to follow. Now with Corvus Black and Dawnstone, there are these like bundle ropes that they have. This is attaching his front armor plate to his back plate, and on the cover art it's dark, so we're going to use Corvus Black, which is kind of a bluish black, and then we will then highlight the edges, ribs, whichever, with Dawnstone. This is just a quick, simple, easy job. And then with Athonian Camo Shade, or Anthonian Camo Shade, mixed with a little bit of Lamian Medium, as always, like 1-to-1 or 2 parts, minimum of 1-to-1 or 2 parts Anthonian to Lamian. I then apply it on the wood that I painted because it just wasn't sticking out enough, and this made the Rakarth flesh stick out more and added a bit of more flavor to the wood. And now with Steel Legion Drab and Fire Slayer flesh, we're going to apply it to these 2 bags that are being held on his back and these little, like, bands, wraps that are around his feet. Steel Legion Drab is a base coat. We will then apply Fire Slayer flesh mixed with Lamian Medium, and we will apply this all over. We'll basically do maybe around 2 coats, Steel Legion Drab, Fire Slayer flesh, then a little bit of Steel Legion Drab to pick out the edges and details, and then maybe some Fire Slayer flesh again onto the bags, on the bottom part of the bags, just to add a little more shadow. And then with your appropriate color of choice, we paint the rock. I painted it Doombull brown because I wanted it to like kind of match with the dark brown, muddy terrain. Now since we're trying to paint well, everything must have a certain level of standard so that it blends in together. If something is of lower quality in a model, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So with Ogrun Camo, Drakenhof Nightshade, Dawnstone, and Black Templar, we're going to paint the head that's hanging from his stomach. With Ogrun Camo, because it's like a whitish, sickly green, we're going to use this to paint the head. And then we're going to take Drakenhof Nightshade, diluted 1-to-1 with Lamian Medium, and we're going to apply this all over. And when that dries, we're going to take Ogrun Camo again, and then we're going to highlight all the edges. I'm going to paint like straight lines across his forehead to show like the forehead lines. And then we're going to apply Drakenhof Nightshade again. And then we're going to highlight again with Ogrun Camo on like the nose, the jaw, like the most pronounced areas of his face and such. Then we're going to take Dawnstone and we're going to apply it onto his hair as a base layer. And then we will take Black Templar contrast paint and we will mix it with water, dilute it a bit, and then we'll apply this onto his hair all over. Now with Screaming Skull and Drakenhof Nightshade, and of course Lamian Medium, we're going to paint this head with a beard that's next to him. We're going to start with a full layer of Screaming Skull as a white base color. Then we're going to take Drakenhof Nightshade mixed 1-to-1 with Lamian, and then we're going to apply this all over. We're actually going to do 2 back-to-back coats. And then once that is done and dry, we then take Screaming Skull and re-highlight all the flesh. And then we will apply 1 more final coat of Drakenhof Nightshade on it to even it out and bring it all together. Smooth out the transitions. Also, while it is drying, make sure the Drakenhof Nightshade doesn't pull too hard in the underside or in certain areas like the mouth and such. Since we're doing a lot of layers, make sure it doesn't pull only at the very last layer. Can you allow some pulling if you choose to, but that's an artistic choice at that point. Now with Rakarth Flesh and Magos Purple, we're going to paint the giant tongue that sticks out. We're going to start with a base layer of Rakarth Flesh as the base. Then we're going to take some Magos Purple, mixed 2 parts Magos to 1 part Lamian, or 1-to-1, either or. And then we're going to apply this all over the tongue. One key thing, do not let it pull. We're going to do a lot of layers, and so we need no pulling. We just want it to be shaded that way. And so once that's done, we're going to take Rakarth Flesh and we're going to apply it again on the most open, most highlighted areas. Now the paint doesn't come out that well for this one, but we're not really focusing on that. That'll be fine. We'll then apply another layer of Magos Purple this time on it. We don't let it pool. And then we will apply another shade. It looks okay. And then we will keep applying, like, we're around like 2 to 3 shades total, and then the final shade what we're going to do is we're going to apply it on where we believe the recesses are. We don't want it to pool anywhere. We don't want the recesses to be flooded because everything's going to be dark and the flooding will look bad. And so on the final layer, just apply Magos Purple on where you consider the undersides or the non-raised areas. Now with Cadian Flesh Tone, Kislev Flesh, and Skeleton Horde Contrast, we're going to paint another head. With Cadian Flesh Tone, we're going to paint the base layer of this head. And then we're going to take some watered down Kislev Flesh and mix it in with the Cadian Flesh Tone, a 1-to-1 mix, and then apply it as a highlight, covering 90 to 95%. And then we're going to apply a little bit of watered down Kislev Flesh, highlighting it further. And then we're going to take Skeleton Horde Contrast, mix with Lamian Medium, and we're just going to apply it directly into the recesses. This was not the right call, and I didn't have a brighter skin color. I don't have any Pallid Witch Flesh, I ran out, and I keep forgetting to get some. And so this head is a little dull in color. It's just not as bright, the contrasts aren't high enough. What I should have done is Cadian Flesh Tone, Skeleton Horde Contrast, Cadian Flesh Tone, 1-to-1 mix of Cadian with Kislev, and then the final bit of Kislev. Then with Ustabi Bone and Wraith Bone and a 0.25mm micro pen, we're going to paint his eyes and teeth. The Ustabi Bone is going to go onto his teeth, and you won't see me do it, but I'll apply a thin layer of Skeleton Horde Contrast in there, in which I'll highlight the teeth. And then with Wraith Bone, we're going to use this to paint the eyes, the eyeballs, because according to the cover art, he still has them. Then with the Micron pen, we're going to go tap 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 directly into his eyes. I can't show it on camera because I have to get my face right up to there, and like I can't actually record that and get it right at the same time. So it's just you take the pen and slowly just tap 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 just once or twice, and then you're done. And then I did his hair the same way I did the hair of the head on the stomach. And then with Mournfang Brown, we're going to paint all the leather straps that are tying the heads together. And so with Mournfang Brown, we're just going to apply a simple layer there. If you notice there's a skull there, I basically just painted it Screaming Skull, and then Skeleton Horde, Screaming Skull, Skeleton, Screaming Skull. Done. Easy. And so the Mournfang Brown, I apply this on all the straps, holding all the heads together. And that is the last bit of the flesh. Also forgot to mention at the very top there's a severed hand up there. I painted that the same way as the head that has his eyes still on. Now with Vallejo Pigment Powder, Light Sienna, and some Liquitex Matte Varnish, we're going to focus on the base and stuff. We're going to apply pigment powder. So last time I screwed it up, but this time whatever amount of pigment I had like 2 little brush handfuls, whatever the brush could pull out of the pigment powder. I applied 4 drops of water and 1 drop of the Liquitex matte varnish onto it to make it as a sealant. This time I just tried it. It was very loose. There wasn't that much pigment powder in it, so it was very watery. And so I just applied it all over, just dunked it on. I didn't want it to really touch the feet, just to be around the feet and the rock. And in the end, it actually turned out pretty well. The pigment powder was able to flow well into place, even though there wasn't that much in it. What little there was, I could have added a little more pigment powder, would have made it stronger, but the pigment powder flowed into the recesses. It looked dirty and chalky. The flow, the distribution of the pigment powder seemed natural, and the little bit of matte varnish didn't ruin it. It sealed it in. I rubbed my finger against it, and it came out well, and nothing came off. So it's in there, it's sealed. So this is good. Now that all non-metallics have been done, I then take AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish and I use an airbrush and I apply it all over the model, and all the excess in there goes focused at the feet to do extra sealing. Now the model has a nice pristine matte finish and everything is sealed and fine. Now we move on to the metals. We're going to try to get this right again with Ironbreaker, and Blood Angel's contrast red, we're going to try to paint the red metal. Now, basically, I start off with one brush worth of Ironbreaker, and then I added drop by drop enough Blood Angel's red until the metal was a very deep red color. And then I add a little bit of Lamy and Medium to help it flow. And then in the end, I apply 2 coats of this, because the first one was a little bit pink because of the very white background, and the second one was very pink, or very red. And with Skeleton Horde contrast mixed 1-to-1 with Lamy and Medium, I then apply this all over the red metal. Now, interesting thing, Skeleton Horde contrast on its own would dull all the metal and shine and make it look dead, but the Lamy and Medium somehow allows the metal underneath to shine through a bit. So, alright. And so I take this and apply this all over the metal to add some depth. And then I go back with the mix of the Blood Angel's red and Ironbreaker, and I just use it as a highlight onto all the edges of the metal, the open flats, and the folds and stuff. Basically the raised areas, to make it shine even more and stick out more. Now with Brass Scorpion and Retributor armor, I do these brass token thingies, shields that are on the staff. And so I start with a layer of Brass Scorpion. And then I go straight to Retributor armor, but it's too much of a contrast. So I go back and I do a 1-to-1 of Brass Scorpion and Retributor armor, and I paint like 90 to 95% of these metal things. Only the deepest, darkest recesses won't be touched, and I basically highlight it. And then I go back with the pure Retributor armor and paint it on the most raised, most pronounced, most edged pieces of it. I then go back with my Skeleton Horde contrast mix with Lamy and Medium, and I just apply it all over the brass thing to add more depth into the shadow. Alright, with Iron Warrior's base and Iron Hand Steel, we're going to paint all his metallics. We're going to start off with painting every piece of metal that has not already been painted with Iron Warriors. The chains, his sword, his whatever that thing is, his pauldron on his left arm, all these little bits of spikes and bolts throughout his staff and such, and his knee pads with Iron Warriors. There's not enough depth in it though with all that darkness, so I take a 1-to-1 mix of Nuln Oil and Lamy and Medium, and I just apply it all over the metal pieces. And the Lamy and Medium maybe should have been a little more of that, because it kind of dulled a little bit of the shine on the metal. It will show on some parts, but we'll fix that. We then go with Iron Hands and highlight pretty much everything. The edges of the metal, the edges of his blade, the tips of the nuts and bolts, and just whatever. And yeah, just have fun with it. And now with colors I haven't used in a while, Riser Rust, Nihalok Oxide, Nurgle's Rot, and Blood for the Blood God, we're going to finish up the model. Now I forgot to get footage of Riser Rust, but basically I just lightly brushed it onto the edges of his side pauldron and places where some of the bolts were, and some random places here and there where I think there would be rust. Then I take the Oxide color and I apply it directly into where the bolts are on the brass, and on some areas of the shoulder pad. It's an artistic thing. You can place it where there are bolts put in, on the edges of some stuff. You just put a little bit. Less is more. We just want a little bit of there to be noticeable. And then with Nurgle's Rot, we're going to apply it because for some reason the tongue is actually dripping a little bit of toxin. So we're going to paint that and a little bit onto the bit of the tongue where the drop is coming from. And then finally with Blood for the Blood God, we're going to apply this onto the head that has the eyes in it, on the top where the spikes are penetrating through, and underneath where blood seems to be flowing out from, because it's already pre-modeled there. And then with this small detail, we're going to take some Rakarth flesh and paint these eyes that appear onto the metal pieces of armor he has and the banner, and then with Abaddon Black we're going to fill in the little pupils. And boom, I brought my A game today. It is done, and wow, I haven't painted this well in a while. I wasn't as inspired to. So I enjoyed painting this model so much that I just couldn't put it down. I just kept painting it. In fact, when I got up, I did it over 2 nights, Monday night to Tuesday night through that time. And I couldn't put it down. Even after I got up on the next day on Tuesday, I immediately went and started painting it again because it was just fun. Everything went successful. Everything I tried worked. So in the end, honestly, I would give this model a 9 out of 10 for my effort. I would have given it a 10 out of 10, but like, so I keep unity with what I have been building, and so far in the Dominion box set to keep in line with the Hobgrots, the muddy base. I did it here, but the quality of the model is so nice that the base looks really terrible in comparison and drags it down. This would have been a 10 out of 10 if its base would have been better done, or like more detail put into it. Can't really think of what that would be right now, but man, it could have been a 10 out of 10. So much effort, so much detail. I was able to succeed on everything I tried to do, pretty much, and it looks good. There's tremendous detail, a lot of color on this. Not bad for acrylics, not bad for like one day's work. I had a lot of fun with it. This was actually a really good model. Nice. Alright then, well, like the video if you like the video, dislike it if you want to dislike it, comment if you want to comment, share it if you want to share it, and I will see you soon, hopefully.